Good morning, DrupalCon! Hey, how's everybody doing out there? It's wonderful to see all of you here. It's a beautiful day in Pittsburgh, and we are so thrilled to have you. I am privileged to be the first person on this stage today to welcome you all here. My name is Tim Lennon. You might know me as Hestenet on Drupal.org. I'm the CTO of the Drupal Association, and we are the nonprofit foundation that supports Drupal and puts on DrupalCon, and we're thrilled to have you. Thank you so much. In a spirit of gratitude, I do want to say some thank yous. So first, a thank you to the Drupal Association staff and the more than 100 volunteers who are all here or getting sessions ready or mentoring or speaking. Thank you, everyone, for everything you're doing to make DrupalCon happen. I want to thank our sponsors as well. Their financial support makes all of this possible. And these sponsors are not just vendors in some expo hall. These are people who help to build Drupal, some of the greatest experts in the community, people who've been here for a dozen years or more. And I encourage you to go to their sessions, talk to people, learn, and network with all of them. I also want to thank the supporting partners of the Drupal Association. You may not know the DA, as a nonprofit organization, runs Drupal.org as the infrastructure for the project. We provide security information, updates, localization hosting, all of these things, and all the tools you're going to use to contribute on Wednesday and to collaborate with each other throughout the con. So thank you to all of the supporting partners who've helped fund this work and keep the Drupal Association going. We really appreciate that support. Finally, I want to thank you, all of you as the attendees here in Pittsburgh, everyone who's come together. You are the heart and soul of this community, and DrupalCon is about people. It's about the hallway track. It's about meeting each other, making new connections and new friends within the Drupal community, and I encourage you to do that throughout the event. So this week, we do need your cooperation. Here in Pittsburgh is the hometown of a beloved children's educator in the United States that some of you from the rest of the world may not know, Mr. Rogers. And Mr. Rogers' message was that everyone, each and every one of us, especially the children, is special. Each person is unique, and that we can all be more civil, more loving neighbors to one another. And in that spirit, we ask that you please cooperate with our COVID safety policy and wear your mask indoors throughout the event to help protect and support your neighbor who may be more vulnerable than you and who needs your support. We also remind you of our DrupalCon Code of Conduct. If you're ever concerned about something that might be happening at the event, you can contact the conduct@association.drupal.org email address, or find a member of staff or someone at the registration desk, and we'll get you support as soon as we can. Finally, please respect the photo policy. If you see someone wearing an orange lanyard, that is because they would like not to be photographed. So, if you can find another angle, get the photographs you want. We love you sharing all of those, but please respect those who do not want to be photographed. We also want to invite you to some events throughout the conference. So right after this keynote, we would like you to join us for the group photo. You'll go out the doors to the left, find the big DrupalCon. We'll all gather together to take this photo of the community together. We also want you to join us for the welcoming reception tonight in the expo hall. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, we'd love for you to join us in contribution. Contribution is what makes Drupal thrive. Drupal is built by people. No one entity, no one person builds Drupal. It's you who builds Drupal. And you can join us throughout the week. You can find mentors. If you've never contributed before, you are probably the most important here. And we want to see you in contribution and help you take that first step. So, a quick sneak peek at what's coming up for the Drupal Association. And there's more that you'll learn about this throughout the week. In particular, there will be a public board meeting here tomorrow, led by our CEO, Tim Doyle, and members of the Drupal Association board. There you'll learn more about what the Drupal Association is going to be doing over the course of the next several years, a plan to accelerate innovation by empowering makers, market ourselves as a platform of choice, and grow the Drupal Association. We'll also be showing a new Open Web manifesto, taking a stand for the importance of the open web and the future of the internet. One of the things that we're doing as part of these efforts to present a more modern Drupal, a better Drupal to evaluators, is we're going to be overhauling Drupal.org itself. So there's a new look and feel coming. This is just a preview. This is not yet the final thing. It's not live. Don't start refreshing your phones. But Drupal.org is going to be updated with some brand new information for everyone out there evaluating Drupal, looking to choose the best platform on the web for their needs. So look out for more on that information soon. And I want to say thank you to our design partners, Third and Grove, who's one of the supporters of the Drupal Association, and to the volunteers of the Promote Drupal Committee, which is made up of folks like you who said, we want to step forward and help build a more modern Drupal.org, a better presentation to everyone who's visiting, and invite them into our community. If you'd like to learn more about Drupal.org itself and the tools we use for contribution, you can join the Drupal.org engineering team panel where we'll be talking about that acceleration. That'll be here in the ballroom today. You can also learn more about Drupal 7 and the plans for end of life by attending the security team panel that'll be happening today in room 323. Finally, and last but not least, DrupalCon Lille is coming soon, so save the date. Registration will be live very, very soon, and you should look out for an interesting plushie hiding around the event that you can take a selfie with, perhaps, and earn a free ticket to travel to DrupalCon Lille. All right, with that, it is my pleasure, my privilege, and my honor to invite members of the Community Working Group up to the stage to announce our 2023 Aaron Winborn Award winner.
I was afraid that I was going to carry it up and show who it was. So. The Community Working Group, its mission is to foster a friendly and welcoming community for the Drupal people, for the Drupal project, and uphold the Drupal Code of Conduct. We have a couple of events that are on the screen, cool. Coming up, we have the Community Working Group's office hours, where we're going to talk about anything you want to talk about in the community. We have a Code of Conduct presentation going during the Community Summit about how we created the new Code of Conduct that was just released. And then we have a community health team where we basically are trying to recruit you to come be part of us, and that will be neat.
Each year, the Drupal Community Working Group is honored to facilitate the selection of the winner of the Aaron Winborn Award. The Aaron Winborn Award is named in honor of longtime Drupal contributor Aaron Winborn, who lost his battle with ALS in early 2015. The Community Working Group, with the support of the Drupal Association, then established the Aaron Winborn Award. The award includes a scholarship and stipend to attend DrupalCon, with recognition during a plenary session at the event. Nominations for the award are submitted by community members. Then members of the CWG, combined with past winners, vote to determine the winner.
The award itself is handcrafted each year by a member of the community. This year, it was designed and crafted by Russell Eck from Canopy Studios. We had a bunch of really great winners and nominees over the past years, and it's our honor to introduce this year's winner. The winner has been a Drupal community member for over 17 years.
One of the nominators wrote, "What sets this person apart, however, is their unwavering commitment to kindness and their above and beyond dedication to the Drupal community." Another nominator wrote, "Their contributions have been immeasurable, and character and commitment to the Drupal community make them a shining example of what this award represents."
This person is actually the person that granted me commit access to Drupal.org, and the voters did not even hold that against them. He's done a lot of work in Drupal. Oh, damn it, I said he. But more well known to a project that I'm sure when I say it, it's going to give the person away, DDev. Yep. And so let's spin up this year's winner, Randy Fay.
Wow, look at how beautiful that is. So great. So great. Thank you so much. Wow. Thank you so much. I'm so honored, of course. And I know that there are so many of you out there that are more deserving of this, but thank you so much. And it's just a pleasure. And thank you so much for being such a great community to work with, because that's what makes it so much fun to share and to work with you. You're interested, you're engaged, and that's what makes DDev become what it is your involvement and questions and improvements and features, and then it just, thank you so much. And it's great to be here with you, and what a pleasure and what an honor.
All right. Thank you, Randy, and congratulations. Let's have one more round of applause for Randy. And now I'd like to welcome Tim Lennon back.
This bubble wrap is broken.
All right, thanks everyone. We won't take too much longer. It is time to get on with the show. So again, it is my privilege to invite onto the stage Dries Buytaert, founder of the Drupal project, co-founder and CTO of Acquia. Thank you, Dries.
Awesome, thank you very much. Good morning, Pittsburgh. First of all, Randy, congratulations. It's so wonderful to see you in after all these years. Yeah, very proud of you. Very happy to have you. And for those that don't know DDEV, I don't know if we explained it actually, but it's a local development environment. So check it out. If you want to run Drupal on your desktop, on your laptop, you can use DDEV to do so. Good morning. Welcome to Pittsburgh. It's exciting to be here. I've actually never been to Pittsburgh. It's first time for me. And on my way to Pittsburgh, I looked up a little bit about the history of Pittsburgh, and what I learned is that it was originally, or it's known even today for being sort of an industrial city, you know, creating steel and coal mining, these kinds of things. And I like that because it's a city where things are made, you know, a little bit like Drupal, things are made. And it's also a city that had to evolve itself over the years, because obviously industries have changed, and Pittsburgh has done that, and I like that as well. I like that because it reminded me of Drupal. You know, Drupal as a project, we have a famous quote that is, the drop is always moving. You may have heard about that. And we have values and principles, and Principle 7 is all about that. Principle 7 is about how we can sit still, how we have to keep innovating. And so I really like that, and because of those things, I decided to make the topic of my keynote innovation. So we're going to talk about innovation today. I think that's really important because if you stop innovating, as you probably know, you tend to lose. And that is not an option for us. It's not an option for us because the mission that we're on, what we do, is just too important. You know, we have to keep innovating. We have to make Drupal super successful, if only because our mission is so great. And so the topic for today's innovation, I'm going to cover that in 4 different segments: license to innovate, jumping S-curves, and letting 1,000 flowers bloom. And then I think the much-awaited Pittsburgh, our innovation contest that we've been writing about in the last month or so. So let's start with the license to innovate. So to talk about that, I need to tell you a little bit about the history of the Drupal Association. The Drupal Association was actually created in 2005, and it was created because we started to organize events, and we would solicit sponsors, and those sponsors in the early days, they would wire their sponsorship dollars to my personal checking account. That's how it used to work, and obviously that's not a great thing to do, because technically that is considered income, and I have to pay income taxes on those sponsorship dollars. And so we decided we needed a better way. We needed a checking account that wasn't subject to personal income tax by me. And so we created the Drupal Association as a tax-free or non-profit checking account. And from there, we started adding other responsibilities to what the Drupal Association does. The Drupal Association got involved with our infrastructure, with Drupal.org. Some of you might remember me talking about the big Drupal server meltdown in 2005, where we had to buy much more infrastructure. The Drupal Association also continued to help with events, like this event. It's organized by the Drupal Association. The Drupal Association then got more and more involved with helping to grow and foster the community, for example, by helping to run different working groups. And then more recently, the Drupal Association had gotten more involved with innovation. You can think about the Automatic Updates Initiative, Project Browser Initiative. These are all examples of how the Drupal Association is starting to help us innovate more on the product side. And I feel that's an exciting change, and we want to do more of that. And to talk about that, I would actually like to invite on stage Tim Doyle, our new CEO, as well as Buddy, our chair of the Drupal Association. And we're going to talk about this for a little bit. Take a seat.
Hi.
Awesome. Welcome on the stage.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're going to have a quick 10, 15-minute conversation about this. Maybe I'll start with Tim.
Sure.
Tim, you joined us 8 months ago.
Yep.
This is your first DrupalCon?
Well, this is my first official DrupalCon. I snuck into DrupalCon Prague because we were still in negotiations, but the board felt it was important for me to understand what DrupalCon's about, so I snuck in there. I wore sunglasses, a hat, and a trench coat, so no one knew who I was. But it was a very valuable experience to get a better understanding of the culture of DrupalCon and of the Drupal community.
Yeah, so this is not your official first, it's your official first DrupalCon, but you've been undercover. Yes. Tell us a little bit about yourself, because most people probably have never kind of met you or don't know a lot about you, so tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My career has been mostly in government and not-for-profit, in the community development, housing, and finance space. In 2006, I was fortunate enough to join a public sector startup that was created by state agencies here in the US just ahead of the Great Recession. State agencies saw storm clouds on the horizon economically because they saw the complaints coming in from consumers. And so from kind of a grassroots initiative, they got together and said, we need to build a system that allows states to work together collaboratively on supervision, but maintain their independence. So I was brought over to help build that system. And over the course of 14 years, 15 years, I played different roles there: product owner, product manager, marketer, salesman to try to sell states, et cetera. So that was probably the most meaningful experience, and really where I got I kind of deepened my IT background and understanding what it means to launch a product, to develop a product, to rejuvenate a product, et cetera.
And you helped that grow to roughly what size?
Yeah, we did a great job. I was a second employee in 2006. We launched in 2008. We went from 7 states in 2008 to 50 states in the District of Columbia using it by 2011. The staff grew from 2 to, on that project, about 50 or 60, and the whole organization grew to 170. So it was, we just did a tremendous job in fulfilling what the states wanted us to do, and I'm very proud of that.
Awesome. And tell us a little bit about yourself that's maybe not on your LinkedIn profile, so to speak. Like,
not on my
any
LinkedIn,
fun
okay.
Facts?
I'll try to keep this PG-13, so we'll try to. One thing that might be on my LinkedIn, but in my 20s, I took a detour off of my career path, and I accepted a job. I left DC and accepted a job in Western Maryland, working in the woods at an alternative school for juvenile delinquents. It was an alternative to prison. These young men could decide to go to prison, or they could decide to spend 18 months at this school living outdoors in a campsite, cooking over fire, chopping wood in the winter to stay warm. And the goal was to form a community that would, with adults and these young men, to help them reform their lives and change the trajectory of their lives and take them out, really focus on group therapy and family dynamics, and then bring them back so they could lead more productive lives. If anyone who has kids understands, it was the most challenging job of my life. It was transformative. When you deal in this arena, or if you're a parent, as I said, you understand it, you face your own strengths, your limits, your weaknesses, your doubts are just right in front of you. And I would not be where I am today without that kind of detour on my career.
Well, that's special. I don't think I knew that, actually, so thanks for sharing.
Good.
Yeah. Let's go back to Drupal. So you've been on the job for about eight months now. Any kind of observations or things you've learned so far?
Well, yeah, it's a little bit like drinking from a fire hose. There's a lot to learn. Of course, I was aware of open source. We used Drupal actually at my old job, but I was not of the open source community. And so I really spent the first 6 months trying to learn and listen. I really believe deeply that in order for me to serve the Drupal Association, to serve the board effectively, to serve the community, I need to understand. So I've met with half the CEOs of our Certified Drupal Partner Program and talked on a variety of issues. But there are a lot of common themes that came out too. Need to re-energize Drupal, bring back some excitement, especially getting young people, ramp up our efforts to get young people to be joining into Drupal, becoming part of the community, first-time contributors, et cetera. Also need to tell the Drupal story. I heard, folks talk about Drupal is an amazing product. Some people say, oh, there may be storm clouds ahead for it, but a lot of the CEOs told me, no, there's so much there. We're not effectively telling the story, and we need to effectively tell the story to end users. I imagine folks in this room, you're here because you're already believers. How do we reach the non-believers? And part of that is, I think, also identifying what is the market segment that we're going after in the future, and I know the Drupal 7 conversation later today, I believe, will be part of that conversation too, about what is, identifying the market segment and then aggressively going after that. I also heard, talked to a lot of community members. The community is incredibly committed, very impressed by that, incredibly creative, and incredibly opinionated. The joke in DC, the joke in DC, I've dealt with a lot of lawyers in my life, and the joke is you get two lawyers together, you have three opinions. Well, I think you could get two Drupalists together and have three opinions. But I think that contest of creativity is fantastic. That's where the big ideas come from, and I think it's a good thing to have that contest.
Awesome. And so you probably picked this up, but Tim has this interesting background with deep nonprofit experience, but also growth and innovation experience, which we thought was very interesting. But maybe, Barry, obviously you're the chair of the board, you were involved with the CEO search, you're part of the search committee, as we call it, that looked for our next CEO or ED. But take us back a little bit, because obviously as a board we had offsites, and we brainstormed about what do we want to do and what do we want to look for. So maybe give us a little bit more of that context and background about how we actually ended up with Tim, so to speak.
True, it was an interesting time, probably in 2019, I think it was. And in 2019, we said oh, wow, we are Drupal Association is financially stable. We have a lot of supporting partners. What is next? And that question was asked in 2019, right? And we decided to meet in March 2020 in Atlanta. So the board came together, and I think it was on the 5th of March or something. And we all traveled in, and we were really excited, and we started on the first day with all these yellow posters, asking questions, where should we do and what should we do? And then basically we got a phone call saying hey, there's this thing happening in the world, and the schools are closing, so you should just maybe go home. And we changed from completely having this what are we gonna do next into survival mode. And we were just okay, how are we gonna do next DrupalCon? What are we gonna, how is it gonna affect us? Because one of our profit that we have from DrupalCon is actually helping us to support the Drupal Association. So that was, of course, 2 years process, right? And I think the opportunity came, and of course the opportunity comes when we need to search for a new person for the job. And then we say okay, so we did it again, but this time it was actually, we were able to sit in a room and brainstorm, and we talked about the Drupal project has always been run by Drupal, by Dries and the core committers and the community, and the DA has been the supporting partner for the Drupal project. But now it was a little bit time, can we do something more? Because we hear it from the organizations. The organizations say, we want to contribute more to Drupal, but we just don't know how. We don't know what is going to make an impact. How can we actually change the needle? Because there are so many things that we need to do and we need to innovate. And can we at the Drupal Association actually help with that? So we started to look at the things innovation, marketing, how can we do those things? And that was the qualities that we were trying to look in the new CEO. And yeah, and of course, maybe we're going to go into that on the next slide, but the big part is about how are we going to fund all these things. Yeah. So there's, I think, these three themes. It's going to be innovation, marketing, and funding.
Yeah, so let's go into that.
Yes.
So the last, 8 months or so, we've been working on what we call our strategic plan, And so we've been having meetings, all of us and other board members to kind of figure out what are the areas of focus. And, Batty mentioned innovation, marketing, and fundraising to build more capacity. But maybe let's go, and obviously there's like a layer of detail below those 3 high-level things. So let's unpack that a little bit, and let's give people a little bit more color on what that means. And before we do that, let me say we just have to kind of stay high level, because tomorrow there's an entire session dedicated to these topics that will be in this room as well, and I'll show you the details on the screen. I think they just came on. So we can just kind of give you a teaser, and then tomorrow, if you're interested, you can come and learn more about all of these things. So, but
there'll be a lot more details tomorrow, but there's 3 themes: innovation, marketing, and fundraising, which is the 3-year strategic plan. And really, with innovation, we're talking about positioning the DA to be 100% focused on supporting makers, creating makers, promoting makers. How do we focus everything we do about leading to more makers? And we just hired Alex Moreno. Alex, can you stand up and wave?
Yeah.
Our first step into trying to add capacity at the DA, because I came on, the finances are strong, but the board's ambitions are also strong, and we need to match our finances with the board's ambitions. Marketing is an initiative around getting to end users. So we'll be rolling out a number of initiatives around how does the DA take a more active role speaking to end users.
And maybe for a little detail there, like we have a very small team, the Drupal Association, and if we want to do like marketing and we want to help with marketing of Drupal and we want to like help to bring that out to the companies, like how are we going to talk about Drupal, then of course we need to build up a lot of capacity on the marketing side as well.
Right.
So I think that's going to be challenged by how are we going to be able to do that, because we are actually running on a very lean budget, right?
Yes, it's very solid, stable, but lean. And but I would say I'm very impressed with the Drupal board. Would like to thank the board members that are here. We spent the last 2 days in a retreat, and folks flew in from all over the world to help plan this, to just focus on the strategic plan and the things that the Drupal Association needs to do. One thing as a new CEO always does is looks at the board, and it's almost one of the most, if not the most important decision in taking a job. I was very impressed with the Drupal Association board. The last is fundraising, and probably 2 things I'd say to that. One is we're looking at how do we raise revenues that we can then plow back into these marketing efforts and these innovation efforts. We'll look at that in generally two ways. One is what do we do now, and how do we build on that? And second is to begin to develop a philanthropic mindset at the Drupal Association. And that's a longer-term project, so that's not something that you do in 6 months or 12 months. But the good work in supporting the open web, and we are a digital public good now. These are things that philanthropic funders look for in an organization that they can get behind. And so we want to find funders that are aligned with our mission.
It's something that we've never done at the Drupal Association. We've never applied for a grant. And as you probably know, there's a lot of grants out there in the world. So one of the things to help us with that is to really focus a little bit more on the open web as being a key part of our purpose. And so one of the other things we've been working on is a manifesto, right?
Yes, and you'll, at the open board meeting, we'll be presenting on that, so you'll see the details, have the chance to read that. But it really is our statement. When people ask, what is the Drupal Association, what is the Drupal community about? We're about an open, inclusive web. And it's the manifesto that really lays down our values in this. And that speaks, hopefully, to the wider world, but certainly will speak to funders.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, thanks for that.
Cool. Thank you.
I'm going to ask you to exit the stage. Thank you very much. So yeah, if you want to learn more about this, join us tomorrow. We can go into a little bit more detail, and also expect us to communicate more and more of these things as we finalize them. So next, I want to talk about jumping S-curves. So let's talk about what that is. So what do I mean when I say an S-curve? And here's a slide that I've shown before. You might remember that from different keynotes. And it's basically a classic chart of how innovation evolves, right? So you see these S-curves. Typically, the beginning of the S-curve is so an innovation that starts off slowly. In the middle of the S-curve, you see like rapid innovation, and then it peaks out. And then the next S-curve kind of starts at the end of the previous S-curve. And eventually, you have to make the jump from one S-curve to the next S-curve. You have to make that leap. And that's what I mean when I say we have to like jump S-curves. And so to stay relevant, an organization or an open source project or really anything in the world needs to be able to make these jumps. And there's many, many examples of that. Like one great example that I actually learned about from Guy Kawasaki is around refrigeration. I don't know if you know this, but back in the day, there was this thing called ice harvesting, where people would dig ice out of frozen lakes in winter and then distribute that ice to different restaurants and places and homes to basically preserve food. And it was a hard challenge, and people would do all kinds of things to store ice and try to make the ice last until summer. It's incredible. And eventually, there was like an S-curve jump innovation, which was an ice factory. So now imagine these huge factories producing ice and then still doing the same thing, distributing ice around for food preservation. That eventually led to a personal ice factory, which became a fridge or a freezer, right, which we have today. And so it's a classic example of how technology evolves. And there's many others. And there's a few important things we can learn from all of this. And so if you look at home entertainment as an example, you can see on the screen sort of the different S-curves, but an important lesson is that going from one S-curve to the other can actually be a little scary and often is polarizing. And that sounds a little bad, but let me give you two examples. One, imagine going from rental stores to shipping DVDs. Well, guess what? The rental stores went out of business. They're pretty much gone, if they're not entirely gone already. And that wasn't an easy transition for them, obviously. A more recent example is going from traditional TV, where you had advertising, to streaming TV. And all of a sudden, people could jump over the ads. Guess what? That was extremely polarizing for the advertising industry. They weren't very happy with that, right? But it was still an unstoppable innovation. Another great example of sort of S-curves is around communication. And you can see that here, how we went from the telegram to the telephone to the cell phone to eventually a smartphone. And what's interesting about this one is that it often can take time for sort of the next S-curve to be recognized. These S-curves coexist for a while, and often we poo-poo the new S-curve. And an example of that is the telephone. There's this famous quote that you can see on stage. It's from Western Union, basically saying the telephone is never going to be relevant. And obviously, they were very wrong about that. And similarly, more recently, with the advent of the smartphone, we didn't really realize how powerful the smartphone was going to be, that it could be used for much more than phone calls. Now, here's another S-curve, the camera, which is a subject that I love. I love photography, so I study photography a little bit, at least. And you can see there was an evolution from cameras using glass plates. These were big, bulky cameras back in the day, to a more portable camera, which ended up becoming the 35mm analog camera. And then from there, we went to digital cameras, and ultimately, smartphones have overtaken basically cameras. Now, what's interesting about this example, and you'll find this in all of the examples, is that very often the beginning of an S-curve starts with a single person, or maybe a very small group of people. And in the case of the 35mm camera, it was Oscar Barnack. And he actually had a health condition where he couldn't drag along these heavy glass plates cameras. And so he set out to build a portable camera. And he did something very cool. So at the time, cinema or film was very popular. And he decided to take a spool of film, you've seen these big spools, and to flip it on its side, to turn 90 degrees. And he then decided to build a camera around a single frame of a roll of film. Wasn't that cool? Instead of using these big, heavy glass plates. And so that led to the first kind of portable camera. Now, Barnack was lucky to work at a company called Leica. And Leica at the time was building microscopes. And so they had a lab and tools to build things like microscopes. And obviously that helped them build a camera. And Leica also had a great boss. And he saw music, he saw some potential in his early camera, and he helped him basically commercialize his prototype camera that he built for himself, this portable camera, and to bring it to the market. And you can see, as an example here, some old advertising. It says, Klein Film Camera. And I'm not German, so doing my best. But I can read what it is because I speak Dutch, and it means small film camera, or small portable camera. Anyway, so Leica started promoting this camera, and many, many years later, eventually, it led to this 35 millimeter cameras being mainstream. Like every Nikon, Canon, all these cameras that you know were all coming out of this little innovation by Oscar Barnack. And the reason photos are the size that they are is because the original size of a flipped film strip. So it's pretty interesting. Anyway, the lesson is innovation can start with one. The power of one is an important lesson as well. Now, Drupal has made several jumps on its own. In the early days of Drupal, we were kind of at the end of the static web and at the beginning of the dynamic web, I would say. You know, PHP and MySQL were just born, and it allowed us to build much more dynamic websites. And Drupal successfully transitioned over a few S-curves, call it the social web, the mobile web, Web 2.0, whatever you want to call it. We rode that wave up, and there was a jump in S-curve. Now, the next question is, what's going to be next for Drupal? Some people say, is it Web 3 with crypto? Is it AI? Is it JavaScript? Is it headless? But really, who knows? We don't really know, because as I mentioned, these S-curves, they can be, they coexist, and it's not always clear what the next S-curve is going to be. And so the trick, the thing that we need to do is we need to figure out what that S-curve will be, and then eventually make the jump, right? Now, the tricky part is there's no real user manual for how to do this. It's hard to do, but from these examples that I gave, there's a few lessons, a few things that we can learn. In fact, we can learn how it's not done. And it's not done aimlessly, right? If you think about these examples, there's always some kind of vision or purpose. Barnack wanted to build a portable camera. That was his vision. He had a clear purpose. We also know it's not done by an innovation council. It's not necessarily top-down. It's very grassroots. It's somebody somewhere deciding to build something cool. And again, the Leica example is a great example of that, a single person trying to solve a problem. We also know it's not pure luck. Usually, there is a support environment, something that helps an idea flourish, something that helps an idea become big. And again, in the case of Leica, it was the lab that he worked in. It was also his boss that wanted to help commercialize his invention. So had a strong advocate or supporter. So we know that is also often the case. And finally, we know that it doesn't happen overnight. Because it was actually a long time between Barnack inventing his camera and 35 millimeter film becoming a big thing. These things take time. All right, so these are four kind of ingredients: purpose and vision, some sort of individual, a supportive environment, and then time for the idea to grow and develop. So that's how these S-curves happen. Now, there's a lot of people that invent things that don't result in an S-curve. Maybe it's one invention out of 1,000, let's say. And so that's where we have this notion of letting 1,000 flowers bloom. Like, we need to create an environment where people can create things and we can launch lots of different experiments and see which ones will actually take off in a very grassroots way. So I want to talk a little bit more about that. So to map it onto what I just said, to let 1,000 flowers bloom, you need a sun, because we want experiments and innovations to grow towards something, right? A vision and a purpose. We also need seeds, people that create ideas. Sorry, let me talk a little bit more about purpose. And so the good news is we have purpose, and we have a vision in Drupal, right? We know we're all about the open web. We want to build a web in a way that makes it accessible and inclusive and safe and secure for everyone in the world. That's an important vision or purpose. But we also have a vision, and I talked about this at the last DrupalCon in Portland, where I said Drupal is for ambitious site builders, right? And I showed this slide, actually, and maybe I'll recap it real quick, but this is a slide from my presentation, and I said, what makes Drupal unique is that we appeal to these site builders and that we're going back to our roots. On the left, you have developers. Developers write code, they use a command line, they're very technical, they love frameworks. And on the right, you have content authors and site builders. And they like to not write code, or they don't know how to write code. They like to use the UI, drag and drop, WYSIWYG, those kinds of things. And they love using SaaS solutions. But there's this interesting gap in the middle between developers and content creators, which I call the ambitious site builders. It's the people that want to use the UI, but if necessary, they can also use a little bit of code. They might be able to use the command line. And when I announced this at DrupalCon Portland, people really liked it. I got a lot of positive feedback. Now, people also asked me, like, can you talk a little bit more about it? Because as we think about building things for these people, we need to better understand what they are, these people, and what they like to do. So we workshopped this a little bit, and we'll have to do more work on this, but just to help you understand this a little bit better, the ambitious site builder doesn't typically identify as a developer. They wouldn't call themselves a developer. However, they're very technically savvy, which is a different thing. They can use the command line on a basic level, but they might be a little bit nervous about it, right? Imagine somebody having to execute something on the command line, being a little bit nervous and executing it, and then feeling a huge sense of empowerment. Like, wow, I just did something really cool on the command line. They don't like getting stuck with SaaS solutions, and they really wish we had like a layout builder and page builder, these kinds of capabilities as part of Drupal. So more on this later. Then we need individuals, right? The power of one. And that can be anyone. And guess what? What's better than the power of one? The power of many. And we have many, many people in the Drupal community that can help us innovate and that can start great ideas. And I want to highlight one, which is Kevin Quill. And I don't know if he's here. I hope he's here. But Kevin single-handedly started to create the OpenAI ChatGPT integration. And I think that's interesting because I remember the early days of the web, and I was so excited about the web's potential. And as I tried ChatGPT, I felt that same sense of excitement, right? Now, there's a lot of questions about AI, legal questions, ethical concerns, and we have to figure those out. But I love that Kevin took the initiative to build an integration so we can start learning about it, we can start experimenting with it. So you can see here in the video how he was using ChatGPT to automatically generate some text, which I think is pretty interesting. And you can see that it's going to do a few other things, like suggest a title. So one of the features is you write all of this text, and then you can go ask for some title suggestions. And then you can very quickly incorporate these titles in your articles, press releases, blog posts, you name it. In this case, you have to copy-paste it. In the future, there might be even easier ways to do that. Another capability is the ability to summarize text. So next you'll see Kevin highlight some text and then summarize it, which is also quite interesting. I'm excited about this too because some of our competitors recently did press releases. And in the press release, they said, we are going to invest in this. And here we are in Drupal, already with a fully functional prototype. Everybody can use this today, by the way. You just have to install the modules. It's pretty cool. All right, so next is sort of that support environment, the soil. And the good news is that Drupal has this. Like, we have an incredible supportive environment, and it starts with our license. The open source license gives everybody the 4 freedoms. Everybody can use Drupal. change Drupal, share these changes. That's incredible soil for a supportive environment. But we have more. We have all of the tooling that the Drupal Association created, the tools that allow us to collaborate with thousands of people. We also have a lot of processes and documentation and governance. We have events like this that all encourage people to contribute. And in fact, we recently hit 50,000 contributed modules. Did you know that? It's pretty cool. All right, but that doesn't mean we're done, right? It means we have a lot of great things going, and it has led to a lot of great innovation, but we should always ask ourselves, what else can we do? I want to briefly focus on two things. The first thing is product innovation. I believe that everything starts with Drupal being great. If we don't have a great product, the rest doesn't really matter. You know, Drupal needs to be so compelling that everybody wants to innovate on top of Drupal. That is a key thing. And I'm very excited because Drupal 10.1, our next release, it's just like a week or so away, or a few weeks away, will be filled with new features. I think I've never seen a minor release like Drupal 10.1 that has so many new innovations. So let me talk to some of them. Single directory components, great for designers. A streamlined content modeling experience, also really cool. More flexible block and page management. We added accessibility testing to core. That will be great. We've also added this new capability so that the Drupal Association specifically can send you messages in Drupal. Maybe there's a new release or a security release. We can notify people about events so we can bring more people into the community. We've made improvements to the content authoring experience. You can see that here. It's kind of using Markdown, and it automatically recognizes formatting things. Then we've also made Drupal faster. We've made improvements to BigPipe. We've made performance improvements to the toolbar. So Drupal 10.1 will be faster as well. And these are just a few things. There's actually many more features that I couldn't fit into this slide or in this keynote, but I hope you will learn about all of them this week. You're at the right place for that. And I'm sure there's many sessions about it. The second thing we should focus on is how can we simplify the innovation process? How can we simplify the contribution process? And just a few weeks ago, all of the core committers, we met in person for the first time. And we spent 3 days together. You can see some of the photos. And we created hundreds of stickies with ideas of how we can simplify things, all the way from improvements to our tools, all the way to how we streamline our governance and decision-making processes. But also we talked a lot about culture. For example, one of the things we talked about is how can we make sure that perfect isn't the enemy of good? How can we go faster? Now, I can summarize 3 days of brainstorming and work in this keynote. I just wanted to let you know that we had that meeting and that we left that meeting pretty excited and that there's more things to come. All right, so next is time. We need to give sort of these innovations time to grow. But the other thing that we need to do is we need to then find ways to spotlight great innovations, right? If you have all these innovations happening everywhere, how do we tell people what's important and what's not important? Can we help grow certain innovations faster, the ones that have potential? And that's actually where things like the project browser will come in. Originally, right now, the project browser is focused on helping people install and update and find Drupal modules, but in the future, we can do more to spotlight great innovations. Imagine the App Store on your phone. It doesn't immediately go to update these things. It will also help you discover great new things that are being launched on the App Store. We can do similar things in the future to help everybody in the community learn about great innovation. Recipes is another key component of that. It's not on the slide, but recipes is also a way to bring innovations to end users. Hopefully you'll learn more about that in the initiative keynote, which I believe is tomorrow or Wednesday. But yeah, I'm sure there's other presentations about this as well. And so really, to summarize this part, we want to give the Drupal Association a license to help us innovate. Maybe philanthropy can lead to $1 million that we can then use to fund extra capacity. We want to think about how to improve velocity and remove friction from the contribution process so that it becomes more interesting to contribute. Then we want to have tools to identify and nurture all of these great information with things like Project Browser. And then last but not least, we want to continue to make improvements to Drupal, the product, as well. So I feel pretty good about all of these things. Now, if we do all of these things, we should see a lot of great innovation. And in fact, we have a lot of great innovations already. But at some point, we'll also have to make the leap, the jump from one thing to another. And we may not know yet what that is today. But as I explained, based on the example, sometimes we're going to have to make some risky decisions, or we have to make a decision that might be that might leave certain people behind, because we can't be everything to everyone. So we have to be willing and able to make the jump when we see the next S-curve. So I want to leave it at this for now, but next I want to talk about Pittsburgh. So Pittsburgh is an innovation contest that we launched about a month ago, not that long ago. And we have 5 judges that I actually would like to invite on stage. Let's come on. You already know me. You already know Batty, as well as Tim from the Q&A. But we have 2 new people on stage. One is Julien from Skilled, and then we have Martin from Acquia. Welcome. You might wonder why are these our judges? Well, Batty and Tim and myself, we started this. And then we collected money from different sponsors. And Skilled and Acquia gave sort of the most money, and so they were able to send somebody or, basically nominate one of their employees to be the judge. So that's how we ended up here with the 5 of us. And in the last month or so, we collected 35 submissions. Very cool. And we raised $75,000 from different organizations that you can see on the screen. The Drupal Association pitched in money, Acquia, 1X, Skilled, Palantir, Digital, Polygon, Zucha, and ImageX. They all contributed to this contest. So thank you to them for helping us with this. So we had 35 videos. And then what we did is each of the judges actually watched each of the 35 videos. And we had a scorecard, and we ranked each video based on a number of criteria. Things like how big of a problem does this solve? And also, what would be the impact on Drupal? How many people would benefit from this innovation? And stuff like that. And so we ended up each with our own individual ranking of these 35 videos. So we independently ranked them. And then we aggregated our rankings, and we ended up with sort of a combined ranking. And then we basically took the top 7 of those submissions, and those are the ones we're going to show you today. Now, there is another step involved here, because we can't actually fund all 7 of the top 7 that we selected. So after we watch the videos together, we're going to ask you, the audience, to help us narrow down the selection to the ones we can actually fund. And I'll explain that in more detail later. I just wanted to give you the highlights so that you pay attention, because you're going to have to vote after watching the videos. So we're going to show you the videos. They're shown in random order. They're not ranked by our ranking. So let's do that. Hopefully you're excited about it. All right, let's go.
All right. We start with, do you hear me? We start with the first proposal. It's a decoupled layout builder, and the submitter is Previous Next, Kim, and they are known in the community for contribution. And what they're thinking about, and this is a theme that we actually got a lot of submissions around this topic. And why? Well, we want to be enabling ambitious site builders to actually do their things. And what he's going to be talking about is how to rebuild the layout builder with React. And let's just take a look.
Hi, I'm Lee. I'm a developer for Previous Next in Australia, and I'm here to talk to you about an exciting project that will transform Drupal's layout builder. Today I'll walk you through our vision for the coupled editing that will shape the future of Drupal. A bit about us first. At Previous Next, we're no strangers to Drupal contribution. In fact, we're proud to have been amongst the world's most prolific contributors to Drupal over the past decade. With your investment, we're going to improve the layout builder UI experience. We'll do this by rewriting it using React. This will dramatically enhance the content editing experience and in turn bring Drupal into the modern era of web UX. So where does this need come from? Layout Builder was built using Drupal technology that hasn't changed much in 10 years. Page edits use Drupal's Ajax API, and this means a round trip back to the server for UI updates. It's an experience at odds with what users expect from the modern web. Applications that leverage modern JavaScript frameworks perform optimistic updates. They update the UI immediately and then update state on the server in the background. We want layout retrieval and updates to happen in real time for more dynamic editing. We'll achieve this by building a proof of concept for layout editing using React and identifying the pain points. It's a major jump, just as the change to block-based editing in WordPress was. We can leverage prior art from the WordPress community with the uniquely Drupal focus on structured data. To do this will mean providing React versions of all our formatters and widgets and a way for developers to create their own. This is a big change, but it's something WordPress did to set themselves up for the future, and now it's our turn. React is very powerful. We even used it to make this video. We'll need a JavaScript way to declare layouts and blocks, and we have a lot of metadata about these components already, so we aim to automate some of this. We'll leverage JSON API where possible, but also create new JSON endpoints for data that doesn't map to entities. Once we achieve a non-twig way of rendering widgets, formatters, blocks, and layouts, we will be able to keep the layout state in the browser, mutate it immediately, and persist to the back end in the background. Getting down to brass tacks, we're looking at 6 sprints to create a proof of concept, and we propose an investment of $20,000 US to develop this initiative concept. To recap, we'll write an experimental decoupled layout builder module, design an API for describing and declaring React versions of layouts, widgets, formatters, block plugins, demonstrate communicating with Drupal to retrieve and update structured content, and build a proof of concept for a decoupled layout builder. This is a very cool idea that our whole team is stoked about. Thanks for considering our pitch.
Awesome.
So this is one I really like. Amy June submitted this. I just met Amy June for the first time right before this event. So welcome. I know you're in the back somewhere with the cool kids. I love this one. Thank you. I love this one because you'll see she's talking about how do we rebuild the core contributor support materials and how do we nudge folks to meaningful contributions without turning them off as mistakes are made along the way. I think there's a direct tie between innovation in Drupal and getting more contributors and bluntly younger contributors into the process and looking to the future. I love the tangible, she has real timelines on this, the tangible outcomes and deliverables. So let's take a look at the pitch.
Hi, I am Amy June Heinlein, Volkswagen Chick on Drupal.org and Aaron Winborn Award winner, and genuinely a good person who believes anyone can contribute to Drupal. I've been a mentor since 2016. In 2019, I was asked to join the core mentoring program as a team lead. I have the unique privilege of being a non-code developer and have the ability to bridge the gap between the technical writers, the coders, the developers, the designers, and connect them with first-time contributors with skill sets that match their specific contribution needs. I also work with the community working group on the community health team, and right now my current project is creating productive language and dialogue templates around conversations about gaming the attribution system. You might know these as nudges. There are 2 things I would like to work on. First, reimagining the Drupal core mentoring program. I'd like to rebuild the first-time contributor workshops that we present at flagship events like DrupalCon, and also build a program that empowers mentors outside of the core mentor group to present and help with mentored contributions at the local and regional camp levels, sort of a mentor the mentor program. This would involve perhaps modernizing the slide deck we have for DrupalCon, making it more accessible, and creating a more interactive workshop versus straight content delivery. We could provide scripting and knowledge-based documentation around the slide deck so any mentor can use the assets to give the workshop at their local or perhaps virtual event. Second, gaming the system. Is creating tension in the issue queue between contributors and maintainers. Some of the solutions that are being thrown around and discussed might block some contributors from receiving credits and perhaps demoralize novices from contributing more than once. And remember, we're looking for repeat contributions for the longevity of the project. I want to build a presentation for our organizations and agencies and supporting partners who are starting in contributions, which would maybe highlight issue queue etiquette and appropriate first tasks for beginners and when to move past novice issues. It would also highlight some of the do's and the don'ts around adding files and submitting patches and merge requests. So with those two things, I'm asking for $6,000. The funds would be used, one, to rebuild the assets for the first-time contributor workshop. Second, build a presentation around best practices for organizations just starting in contributions. And third, attend DrupalCon Lille in Portland to run the workshops at actual events and get feedback so we can iterate and grow these programs. Thank you.
So the next one is Drupal Gutenberg for Enterprise CMSs. This is Tor Andre Gretland from Frontcom in Norway. I feel like I'm in Eurovision, right? We are going from Australia to the US to Norway. Again here, this is the theme that we heard a lot about this, and might be similar to what we heard before, but let's listen to what Tor Andre said.
I'm Tor Andre Gretland from Frontcom. We're a digital consultancy focusing on Drupal with about 120 people. We want to make Drupal the most easy to use enterprise CMS. You use a CMS to manage content, and the question is not, can you do this in Drupal? Because the answer will always be yes these days. More important is, how easy is it? Will this system make our marketing department the winners in their market? Well, to achieve that, our solution must be easy, effective, and inspiring. And most complex websites are not easy, effective, and inspiring. They're difficult and clunky. We solve this with the Drupal Gutenberg editor, and our clients love it. In fact, we haven't built a Drupal website without Gutenberg since we started the project back in 2018. We make the editor experience closer to the front end, but with an extreme flexibility and extensibility. It's minimalistic to work with, yet with hundreds of possible options that works out of the box. This is the greatest enterprise tool for CMOs and content creators, inspiring them to work on content, update and optimize it for better conversion. More than 3,000 Drupal websites use it already, and outside of Drupal, the editor is already used by more than 80 million websites. The Drupal Gutenberg project has been up and running for a while now, but we want to take it to the next level. We're asking for 20,000 euros to arrange a workshop over a few days where we physically gather people from the WordPress core team that built the editor, the Drupal core team that knows the needs and possibilities for the admin initiatives and so on, and the Drupal Gutenberg team from Frontcom that built and maintained the Drupal Gutenberg module. We want things like creating a Gutenberg starter theme and a starter pack where Gutenberg is set up with a complete front end as a base theme or just a theming reference. We want to make it work also outside of the node edit form, like for Drupal block editing, single field editing, or to use it within the layout builder. Our goal is to make sure that Drupal Gutenberg of the future is always using the latest and greatest version from the WordPress team, and better enable Drupal developers to contribute back upstream. We want Gutenberg more tightly integrated with Drupal, and to do this properly, we need to gather the people that should be involved. This is a great opportunity to extend our cooperation across open source projects and to move forward, making Drupal the most easy to use enterprise CMS.
There we go. So obviously some of you in the room are wondering, well, pitch A, I think it was, it's about decoupled layout builder. This is about Gutenberg. Like, why would we fund them both, right? And so when we saw this in our, combined ranking, we actually deliberated, we talked about this, and we actually felt like they are compatible because the last pitch around Gutenberg is about bringing together all of the different stakeholders, Gutenberg people, Drupal core developers, layout builder people. We can figure out who the right people are to figure out how do we actually get a great layout builder into core. And the second pitch could then be sequenced after, depending on what the outcome of the first meeting is. So if you as the audience decide to vote for both of them and we ended up funding both, we think that will work, and we can work with those two submitters, if you will, to make sure that that money is really well spent. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of that, because we actually did talk about this, and we ended up feeling good about it. So that's it.
Great.
Let's go to the next one.
I'm excited about this next pitch because it really proposes changing the way that Drupal stores and queries data in a way that could provide new capabilities like NoSQL features. So with that, let's take a look at the pitch.
I'm Brad Jones, longtime Drupalista, full-time digital nomad, part-time paramedic. Greetings from beautiful Lake City, Colorado. I turned 40 this year, but you know what really makes me feel old? I remember when Drupal didn't even have fieldable entities in core. It's true. These days, one of the most basic functions of a site builder is to design entities and fields and their relationships to one another. Fields are at the core of Drupal, but just like me, fields in Drupal 10 are showing their age. The Field API is a product of its birth date. Drupal 7 was released in January 2011, and fields were a real market differentiator. Think about this. Drupal 7 is 6 months older than Laravel. We were really ahead of our time. Back to present day, Field API is still powerful, but if you're building a new product that needs room to grow and adapt, fields with set properties can be a restrictive pain point. Here's an example. I run a startup dating app. Much of my data model is as you'd expect. Profiles, matches, photos, you get the idea. But I also have to keep track of lots of other things like tokens for push notifications. I started with a map field that stores a push token and device ID. When I launched my web UI, I had to store additional tokens and metadata. It's all stored in what at the end of the day is just a text field in my database, a PHP serialized string. But what if I want to search for a property of that field, say to find duplicates? Because the data isn't normalized, I can't. Thankfully, time has marched on and all major database engines now support JSON data types, which means you can do things that look a lot like NoSQL inside of a relational database, and so, by extension, Drupal fields and queries. The core team has already decided to require JSON data type support for databases used in Drupal 10. It's now time to unleash that power. I propose to unblock and complete integration of Field API, including entity queries, with JSON data storage. At the same time, we can easily extend the entity system to provide standards-compliant JSON schemas out of the box. Zero-code OpenAPI docs, anybody? We're not far from being the most flexible and performant data management system out there. I think it would take about $20,000 to pay myself and other qualified developers to knock it out. So let's do this.
The next one is a submission from Christian from Factorial. It's a great idea because we all know we all know roles and permissions to manage the policy access to core, and it would be great to have a much greater level of freedom. So let's watch this submission about policy-based access in core.
Welcome to my pitch for policy-based access control in core. I am Christian van den Ende. You may know me as the author of the group module, and I have also written some supporting modules, namely variation cache and flexible permissions. Both are purely APIs and they have 0 bugs. What is policy-based access? Well, it's a type of system where people gain or lose access based on certain predetermined scenarios or policies. How does this differ from what we currently have in core? Well, currently we have permission-based or attribute-based access control, where you have to fit your access logic into assignable sets of permissions. There is no way to assign permissions based on context, such as time of day, and when it comes to attribute-based, you're limited to the subject and the account. What are the benefits or some examples of policy-based access? You may only be able to administer people when you have two-factor authentication enabled on your account. Because we value work-life balance, you may only edit your content during office hours. Or because we don't want hijacked accounts to cause a lot of damage, you may only delete up to 3 pieces of content per day. But there are many more scenarios possible. What do we need for this? Well, we need a new type of cache that can store highly variable calculated permissions. Then we need a centralized permission checker where we can check all of your policies in one place. And then we need an API to convert your policies into permissions. Now here's the good news. Reviewed and tested by the community. Reviewed and tested by the community. All code written already just needs to be converted into a patch for core. So let's talk numbers. We need about 15 days to get all of this to work and have a proof of concept that we can show works with access policies in core. This will cost about 12K, and Factorial has offered us a reduced rate of 800 euros per day to get to that number. We have capacity at the end of this year, and we hope to use DrupalCon Lille as an opportunity to sit down with core maintainers and help get this into core. It's already 90% complete, all of the code has been written, we just need to write some integration. Let's make magic. Thank you for your attention.
So a number of the submissions that we received really spoke to the need to better enable developers that are just coming to Drupal and make that transition easier. And to me, this next pitch stood out because it potentially leverages AI as a way to make that transition easier, but also potentially support both novice Drupal developers as well as something that could be really useful for experienced Drupal developers as well. So let's take a look.
AI Develop Assistant, creating systems using your natural language. Hi, I'm Mindaugas. Recently I have been working on Drupal artificial intelligence meta issues, because I think there is a lot of potential for Drupal and AI. For example, here I listed categories of features that could be created and visualize their current state. But how to create these many features, how to innovate quickly, how to adapt in an accelerating world? Maybe with the help of AI? I'm introducing AI Developer Assistant, which could help build Drupal systems using your natural language. Simply select a module you want to improve, give AI instructions in a future with your voice, talk with AI about improvements to the code, review and confirm the changes, and keep improving. Code Drupal inside of Drupal, build AI features with the help of AI. How can this be achieved? I posted this issue with the details, for example giving AI access to configuration, to drush, to vision, and so on. Here I already published a module with some code, and to further advance this course I'm seeking 12,500 to fund 250 hours of development to implement first part of the roadmap and research second part. First part will enable you to talk with AI about the code base, and I tested this alone greatly improves productivity. To implement this, I will work with other module maintainers to code, test and integrate universally useful features like chat interface and prompt engineering tools. Advance these features for any use case. I will also use some of this time to continue facilitate innovative Drupal AI ecosystem as cutting-edge AI research evolves. Drupal will be prepared and ready to adapt and maybe contribute in enabling whole society to adapt as well. All the links of issues will be in video description, and thank you for your consideration.
And last but not least, this is about Drupal API client. The use of Drupal as a decoupled backend is huge, and imagine if you'd had a unified, clean API for all the JavaScript friends. Let's have a look at it.
Hi Sharks, I'm Brian Perry from Chicago, Illinois, and I'm here on behalf of the Drupal API Client project. We're seeking $10,000 to build an extensible JavaScript API client for Drupal, with the goal of eventually publishing the result under the Drupal namespace on NPM. Now, Sharks, let's face it. Drupal core has got great APIs to make data available to decoupled applications, but we fall short when it comes to helping JavaScript developers consume that data. That's where the Drupal API Client project comes in. Our goal is to create a framework-agnostic base class with defaults for things like data fetching and caching that can easily be overridden to support different implementations or even different API types. We then plan on extending that base class to create a complete client package for Drupal's implementation of JSON API. Sharks, we've handed out some samples by way of a small proof of concept. This is the API Client class, which has a constructor and implements a fetch method, which has a default, but can also be easily overridden. And this JSON API client extends that class, but implements getCollection, which allows us to get a collection of resources from JSON API. And the GraphQL client extends the same class, but implements a query method to query GraphQL. Now, Sharks, we see that you have some questions. Like, why do we believe we'll be successful? We've already had a number of key contributors from the decoupled Drupal ecosystem express interest in participating. What are we going to do with our funds? This is a high-level breakdown of how we plan on using the $10,000. Primarily, we want to use it to be able to allow people to participate who wouldn't have been able to contribute otherwise. And as far as what we're going to deliver, we're going to create the project, develop a vertical slice proof of concept that will allow us to put together an early proposal for the Drupal JavaScript maintainers as we continue to work on the JSON API client, and also scaffold an initial GraphQL client as well. Thanks for your time, Sharks, and together we can make the Drupal API client a reality. Am I good? Am I done? I was told that I would meet Mark Cuban.
Woo! Yeah. All right, so these were our 7 picks. I hope you liked them. Did you like them? Yeah? So, this will be the exciting part, and hopefully it will work. But as I mentioned, now we're going to use your phones. I'm going to show you, and I'm going to explain you how it works, but we're going to show you in a little bit, we're going to show you a URL that you're going to have to type into your phone. I don't know if you need to get off the Wi-Fi or not. If you have, you know, like a regular cell phone subscription that works in the US, you may want to use that instead of Wi-Fi. I'm not sure. We're also going to show you a QR code. So you can probably keep your camera ready as well. It's going to be a little bit easier. But once you open that web page, it's a SurveyMonkey tool. You'll be able to stack rank all of the 7 pitches, and you can do that using your finger by dragging and dropping, or you can use arrows, whatever you prefer. And we'll give you about 2 minutes to do that. After 2 minutes, the music will stop, and the voting will close, and we need about 30 seconds to sort of tally the results and put them up on the screen, and then we're going to reveal the winner. As I mentioned, we can't fund everyone. So the outcome will be a stack ranking, and then we'll go down from highest rank to lowest ranks, and we'll kind of see how much we can fund. Because actually, if you add up all these numbers, it's over 100,000. And so obviously, there's going to be 1, 2, maybe 3 that fall off the bottom that unfortunately we won't be able to fund. So that's the plan. Hopefully that was clear. So let's go. Let's do it. Let's see. People need more time?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's give it a little bit more time if that's possible. We do want people's votes in as much. I think there's some internet connection issues, right? Yeah, so let's add a little bit more time.
We have 435 already.
Okay, so that's pretty good.
If they got a white screen, it might have been in. Even with the white screen, it might have gone in.
So while you vote, well, we give you a little bit more time. I will say we had 35 submissions, and there's, obviously those 7 were pretty good, but there was many, many others that were amazing and hard to choose from. And one of the things we're going to do is after the Dries notes, or after today or tomorrow, we're going to publish all 35 videos. So I would definitely encourage you to go check out some of these other videos. And of course, if any of you want to fund one of these videos, you can. If your company or yourself want to help contribute funding to any of them, please just come talk to us. You can talk to the Drupal Association. You can talk to any of the judges here on stage, and we'll help you. We'll help route you to the right, to the right mechanisms and people to do so.
So how's it going? The numbers are up.
Okay.
We have now almost 600 submissions.
Okay.
I think we are
I think that's good.
It's getting,
it's not meant to be academically precise. 600, that's probably a good representation.
Yeah, I think this room takes 1,100 people or something.
Yeah.
So we're having at least half of them answering here, so looking
so
good.
Whenever we're ready, I think we can show the results and we can try and tally the votes and see, what we can fund. So any moment now, the results could come on screen, and we'll see.
So the question is going to be, for those who know Eurovision, Dries, are you going to say the numbers in French? Because DrupalCon is happening in France in this fall, so let's see.
But talking about the Eurovision vision, one of the things that's interesting about it is sort of the judges, the countries, they actually are responsible for half of the votes, and then the audience, which is people all around the world, are responsible for the other half of the votes. And we kind of like that idea, and we try to, bring that into this a little bit, where the judges gave some points, and then hopefully you'll all be able to give some points as well. So the other thing I can say while we work on the results is, this is kind of a first time that we're doing this, and one of the things we've talked about is potentially doing it again at future DrupalCons if you like it. And if you think about it, it's really a matchmaking program between some of the best ideas in the Drupal community and then and funders, people that want to contribute to Drupal financially, right? And not something that we've really had in this form, and it doesn't always have to have this shape or form. Oh, the results are in. Well, let's take a look. We're going to have to do some real-time calculations here, but number 1 is clearly the decoupled layout builder. So we should fund that. Yes. Gutenberg is number 2.
Okay. So we have...
Definitely need to fund that. I'm pretty sure we can continue funding JSON data and schemas, which appears to be the number 3.
We had
how much is that already?
Yeah, we had almost 700 submissions, or voting.
Yeah, we had almost 700, so I think that's good. Yeah.
Which was number 3?
Number 3 was the JSON data and schema.
Okay, so how much do we have then?
That's 62,000.
62?
From the
All
first
right, we've
3.
got more.
Yeah, right.
So the next one, I think, is the Drupal API clients.
Yep.
So we have 75,000. How much do we have left?
We're at 72,000 now.
Ooh.
So we only have 3,000
We have
left.
3,000 more.
All right, so what would have been the next one? Trying to policy-based, is that right? Oh, no, the B.
Yep.
Contributing, the mentorship.
Amy June.
So Amy needed 6,000, and we have 3,000 to give.
Right.
So we have 3,000 short. So anyone that wants to fund 3,000, come to us. If not, we'll fund you for 3,000. Somebody's raising their hand?
Okay,
right.
so come to us afterwards.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Very good. So unfortunately, we're out of money. But it's for today, yes. But hopefully we can, find other ways to fund these remaining projects and then some of the projects we haven't shown. That actually wraps up the Dries notes. I want to thank everybody. 2 quick things. If you have questions for me about today's keynote or other things, there will be a Q&A session later today. You can see it on the screen. Second announcement, we are going to leave the room and take our group photo, as mentioned, and that's going to be next to the giant DrupalCon out in the hallway just outside. And with that, I'd like to thank my judges. I'd like to thank all of the people that contributed and sponsored the contest. Thank you.